please call the roll.
Don't forget your microphone. Councilmember Ruffridge.
Here.
There's a request for excused absence from Hugarte on the agenda. Councilmember Carey.
Present.
Chilson.
Present.
There is also a request for an excused absence for Parker on the consent agenda, and Hutchings.
Here.
And I don't see Student Representative Knowles. You have a quorum.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda? Ms. Hutchings, thank you. Second, please. Mr. Carey, are there any changes to the agenda or consent agenda? Mr. Chilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Due to the lack of quorum present to act on the introduction of Ordinance 2021-022, the administration has requested withdrawal of Ordinance 2021-022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $100,000 in the COVID-19 Relief Special Revenue Fund for grant funds provided by the State of Alaska Department of Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chilson. Would the clerk please read the consent agenda?
Approval of the September 22nd, 2021 council meeting minutes. New business ordinances. Ordinance 2021-20, suspending restrictions on council attendance by teleconference as established in Soldotna Municipal Code 2.04.010E, brought to you by Councilmember Parker. Public hearing on October 27th, 2021. Ordinance 2021-21, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by an additional $583,000 in the general fund and the Soldotna Regional Sports Complex Capital Project Fund for the Soldotna Regional Sports Complex Major Maintenance and Renovation Project, brought to you by the City Manager. Public hearing on October 27th, 2021. New business resolutions. Resolutions 2021-46, commending Central Peninsula Hospital, brought to you by Councilmember Chilson, Hutchings, and Carey. Resolution 2021-47, ratifying the sewer main extension and inspection agreement between the City of Soldotna and Jason Tanner, brought to you by the City Manager. Resolution 2021-48, certifying the results of the October 5th, 2021 regular city election, brought to you by the City Clerk. Action Memorandum 2021-17, request for an excused absence from the October 13th, 2021 regular City Council meeting. Councilmember Parker. Action Memorandum 2021-18, a request for an excused absence from the October 13th, 2021 regular City Council meeting. Councilmember Hugarte. Informational Memorandum 2021-5, Alaska Redistricting Board, public hearings on proposed redistricting plans, brought to you by the City Clerk. And that is your consent agenda.
Mr. Carey.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to ask that Resolution 2021-047 be removed from the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. Are there any public comments on any of the items just read by the clerk? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone here in the audience that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none here, and looking at the Zoom, I see no hands raised. So we are back, having no one wishing to speak. The approval of the agenda and consent agenda is back before the council. Are there any council objections to approving the agenda and consent agenda? Seeing and hearing none, Council Member Chilson will now present the resolution commending Central Peninsula Hospital to Karen Scoggins, Chief Nursing Officer.
Climbing it up to become the #1 state in the nation for COVID-19 positivity rate per capita, and whereas Central Peninsula Hospital healthcare professionals have demonstrated an indefatigable commitment to protecting the health and well-being of all Kenai Peninsula residents, and whereas Central Peninsula Hospital healthcare professionals are committed to saving lives by caring for others with COVID-19 above and beyond their personal health and safety by treating over 200 inpatients emergency room outpatients, countless urgent care and physician consultations. And whereas Central Peninsula Hospital healthcare professionals have saved numerous lives in our community throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, and through these acts of dedication and selfless care, and whereas Central Peninsula Hospital healthcare professionals and their families have had to sacrifice precious time together as the needs of COVID-19 pandemic continue to strain healthcare workforce nationwide. And whereas the Central Peninsula Hospital healthcare professionals have exhibited boundless compassion, courage, and commitment throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, despite immense stress, fatigue, and physical strain. And whereas Central Peninsula Hospital has been an invaluable asset and partner to the City of Soldotna since its founding, and our community has benefited immeasurably from its presence and service to the residents of the City of Soldotna and the surrounding area. Now therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Soldotna, Alaska, that the Council of the City of Soldotna recognizes and commends the efforts of Central Peninsula Hospital and all of their staff in safeguarding our community throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And that the City of Soldotna Council commends all Central Peninsula Hospital healthcare professionals who continue to risk their health and safety as well as that of their loved ones to save our community. And lastly, that the Council of the City of Soldotna thanks all Central Peninsula Hospital healthcare professionals for their heroic and selfless service throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you truly for all that you do.
CPH, we want to thank the Soldotna City Council for the recognition. We would be very proud of our hospital here in Soldotna. The team has worked tirelessly for the last 2 years, elevated the level of care that is being provided in our community. That rivals Anchorage at this point, frankly. So just please know that your healthcare work team remains compassionate and remains ready to serve the community, and we're just so grateful for this recognition.
The next agenda item is swearing in of elected officials. City Clerk Sainer will now give the newly and re-elected officials their oath of office.
Those who were just re-elected and newly elected would please stand. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, David Justin,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States,
of the United States,
the laws of the state of Alaska,
the laws of the state of Alaska,
and the laws and ordinances
and the laws and ordinances
of the city of Soldotna,
of the city of Soldotna,
and that I will faithfully
and I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
perform and discharge my duties
perform and discharge my duties
as a council member
as a council member to
to the best of my ability.
the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Good job. Moving on to the next agenda item is item 5, presentation with prior notice. And that is the Soldotna Police Department Audit and Accreditation Renewal by Scott Hayes, Executive Director of the Oregon Accreditation Alliance. Mr. Hayes is attending through Zoom, and we're hooking him in now. Go ahead, Mr. Hayes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, just a little technical problems. Hey, good evening, Mayor, City Council, and members of the community. My name is Scott Hayes, and I'm the Executive Director of the Oregon Accreditation Association. I appreciate the opportunity to address the council and present Soldotna Police Department with their second award of accreditation. This is a substantial step for any agency to be evaluated by an outside independent organization and have their policies and practices scrutinized. Law enforcement currently is expecting a changing society with increased demands for police accountability and transparency. As in the past, our profession must face these challenges and work with our communities to address their concerns. Accreditation is one step towards building community trust and legitimacy of our profession. The Oregon Accreditation Alliance was formed under the direction of the Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police, the State Sheriff's Association, and the Association of Public Safety Communications Officials. We provide accreditation services for 68 law enforcement and communication centers in both Oregon and Alaska. Accreditation goals are straightforward. They are to support continued improvement of law enforcement services, establish best practice through professional standards, establish agency accountability and transparency, and enhance management of overall operations. There are 105 different standards the agency must adhere to. These standards are based on best practice nationally and through changes in Oregon and Alaskan law. In addition to each of the standards, the agency must show proof of compliance that the agency actually follows their policy and best practice. The Soldotna Police Department received their first award of accreditation in March of 2018. They were the first to be accredited by the Oregon Accreditation Alliance in the state of Alaska. Reaccreditation occurs every 3 years, which brings us to today. I want to thank the chief, who is also their accreditation manager, for a job well done. I want to thank any of those folks that are behind the scenes who helped out also during the accreditation process, because generally there are many. Chief, it's really hard to see if you're there. I believe you are, but on behalf, and City Council, on behalf of the Oregon Accreditation Alliance and the Board of Directors, I would like to present you with your award of accreditation, which I actually just received today and will go out in the mail next week. Does the council have any questions?
Are there any council questions?
Just one.
Mr. Chilson?
How long does an accreditation last before it has to go up for reaccreditation again?
Every 3 years.
Every 3 years? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the council? I believe that's it, Mr. Hayes. Thank you very much, and I congratulate the police department.
Absolutely.
Thank you. You have a good night all.
Job well done, Chief. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, item number 6, public comments and presentations. Those are for items other than those appearing on the agenda. 3 minutes per speaker, 20 minutes aggregate. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Garrett, and I live in Kenai.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I'm Garrett, and I live in Kenai.
Okay.
So we're here to really show that there are a lot of concerned citizens of what's going on recently with the mandates, lockdowns, things that happened last year because of the virus, the SARS-CoV-2 virus. We want to make sure that people that we've elected are aware of the concerns of the citizens, that we don't want to have any more future lockdowns, any more future mandates as far as masks in public places, vaccination status, which should be protected under HIPAA and other various laws. So I want to briefly read this, and I want to hand this to you because this is basically our Citizens' Declaration of Medical Liberty. And I think it's unfortunate that with the federal dollars that are being funded to our state and then distributed to some of the hospitals, such as our Central Peninsula Hospital, they're not really treating people like they ought to. For some reason, the protocol has been changed to help people. They're basically telling people to stay home until you can hardly breathe and then come in. And then what they do is they put people on ventilators. They go into a coma. Well, they have to put them in a coma first to get them intubated, and then they die a lot of the times. So we're having unnecessary deaths happening for people that are COVID positive, where it doesn't have to be that way. There are people around the world, and there's a lot of doctors that are treating people with alternative therapies, therapeutic drugs. Homer, for example, is starting to Well, for one, they don't require vaccinations for their staff, and they also are keeping an open mind as far as other therapeutics such as ivermectin. Let me read this to you, though. Dear Soldotna City Council members, on Sunday, September 19th, we, citizens of the state of Alaska and local community, held a rally for medical liberty at Soldotna Creek Park. That was in concert with about 37 other cities across the United States. In attendance, we had over 250 people from across the Kenai Peninsula and broader South Central region. During this rally, numerous speakers gave testimony and voiced their concerns about how our government is using unconstitutional mandates to control citizens' rights to movement, assembly, medical liberty and bodily autonomy, economic freedom, and the freedom of speech. It is the right of the people to make official our grievances to the government. When the government goes beyond its enumerated power and infringes upon the natural rights of the citizens, it is our duty to remove those who have abused their positions of authority. We believe it is necessary for the state of Alaska and its political subdivisions to report back to D.C. that the citizens of Alaska will not comply with any enforcement that goes beyond the scope of natural law. We also believe for a free state with a representative government ordained by the people to exist for the benefit of the people, it is necessary for the state and its lesser political magistrates to act in accordance with the Constitution of the United States as well as its own Constitution. Now, to these ends, it is required that every individual who serves as a government official take a solemn oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. If that representative fails to do so, they are not in accordance with their solemn oath and therefore should honorably relinquish their position. So enclosed is an essay by Red I. Pencil. It was a speech delivered by U.S. Congressman Davy Crockett. It's titled Not Yours to Give, and finally, our Citizens' Declaration of Medical Liberty, outlining our demands and natural-born rights as individuals to medical liberty, as well as our intentions of, if the representatives of this state and its political subdivisions do not uphold these rights. So, you've been put on notice, and we are listening and watching intently. I do want to hand these out to you, if I may.
Would you please give them to the city clerk and she can distribute them? Thank you very much for your comments.
Okay.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak? We're not here seeing a movie. We're here for a business session, so please hold your applause. Sir, would you please state your name and address for the record? And
My
you
name
have
is
3
Jason.
minutes.
My name is Jason Floyd. I own a business that's located at 35559 Kenai Spur Highway in Soldotna. I'm not a resident of Soldotna, so I don't get to vote for anybody up here, but I do contribute a lot to Soldotna. The business I represent is Ammo Can Coffee Social Club. We have over 2,000 members, and they're all liberty-loving folks who agree to some basic ideas. And those ideas are based on our constitutional values, as Garrett read. And I'd like to request that the paperwork that Garrett gave you would be added into the official record and scanned into the record for public to review at a future time so that this testimony is not lost in all the noise. Benjamin Franklin said that those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty or safety. Abraham Lincoln said, America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. Recently, I called out our seated senator, Mr. Michicki, for his voting record on liberty, and that resulted in a threat from Mr. Michicki. I talked to him and asked that we sit down for a meeting, which we did, and I told him I would be recording the session, and I sent him a copy of the recording. And one of the very first statements he made after I challenged his opposition to the statements I'd made about his voting record, he confirmed with me that masking and the shutdown of the Capitol and the mandates that began at the beginning of this year, this session, were just a big show, quote. Everybody in this room who's in an official position is wearing a mask. And we all saw the sign on the door that said you must wear a mask in the city. And I submit to you that we're not interested in the show. I submit to you that we are interested in prevention, treatment, both therapeutic and preventative, and that this body would do everything within its power to bring that narrative forward, because it's not being spoken by anybody in office. This hospital received over $14 million in COVID relief funds. Southern Peninsula Hospital received over $7 million, and the Knightsies $1 million. Many of the doctors here have also received large sums of money, and if you listen to the loudest voices calling for masking and mandates, it's those people who got paid. I have 2,000 members who are really unhappy. And the vote that happened just the other day was a pretty dismal testament to the public's trust in this institution. So I implore you to read this entire packet and learn from what Mr. Crockett said. Learn from what the essay says, titled iPencil. And please take our declaration seriously. Thank you for this time.
Are there any questions from the council? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Floyd. Is there anyone else that would like to testify? I see no one here in the room, and I see no one on the Zoom. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, item number 7, Assembly and Legislative Report. Are there any representatives from the borough or the state in attendance who would like to speak? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. I see no one here in the room, and I see no hands raised. So we will now move on to agenda item 8, public hearings, and there are none this evening. Move on to item number 9, new business, and that would be Resolution 2021-047, ratifying the sewer main extension and inspection agreement between the City of Soldotna and Jason Tanner, introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to adopt? Ms. Hutchings. May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
I'm sorry, who was it? Oh, thank you, Mr. Chilson. Report from the administration.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. The Public Works Department has been working with this property owner. It's a local business that's looking to construct at the corner of K Beach and Centennial Road, and their property is at a position where they can't access the existing sewer line by a service line only. So they have requested, and they are willing to extend the main line approximately 85 feet, which would then allow them to tie into the city's sewer system. They're proposing to do it at their own expense. This sewer extension agreement outlines the terms of the design and the inspection and the oversight that the city would have as they construct that project. Their original timeline was to try and get in by the end of this year, but it looks like weather and DOT permitting within K Beach Road may have delayed that. But Kyle Cornelis, our Public Works Director, has provided a memo in the packet, and he'd be happy to answer any specific questions about the project if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Queen. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak on Resolution 2021-047? Seeing none, looking at the Zoom, I see no hands raised there. Are there any council comments? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote.
Councilmember Carey,
No.
Chilson,
Yes.
Hutchings,
Yes.
Ruffridge.
Yes.
You have 3 yes, 1 no, and 2 absent.
The motion fails on a Resolution 2021-047 fails on a 3-to-1 vote. The next item on the agenda is mayor and council reports.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment?
Go ahead, Mr. Carey.
I'm going to request of you. For those who aren't familiar with our process, they might not be aware that 4 votes are required to pass anything. And so it would seem to me not unreasonable. They would heard that the vote was 3-to-1, and yet we said you said it failed. So I just thought that might be good information to provide for those listening or here present.
Because of any motion, resolution, ordinance has to pass on at least a 4 positive votes. Tonight, we have 2 council members that are not present, and there is only 4 council members present. So everyone would have had a vote yes to approve that resolution or any other resolution or ordinance before us this evening. Due to the fact that there was a 3-1 vote, it did fail.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor's report and proclamations, and I will read this one. A proclamation and memorandum. Whereas with the passing of Jim Varso, Hobo Jim, on October 5th, 2021, our community lost a warm, fun-loving, genuine person who brought joy to the residents of Alaska. And whereas Hobo Jim was an American folk singer, songwriter, and one of the most popular musicians in Alaska. And whereas he was named Alaska's official balladeer in 1994, is well known for his unique and catchy songs about Alaska, the people who live here, and their way of life. And whereas he has been a musical icon in Alaska for over 40 years, frequently performing at local venues here in Soldotna, and whereas he is a regular favorite during the City of Soldotna Music in the Park summer events, where children and adults are lined up to sing along with him. And whereas many of those who grew up in Alaska grew up singing his Iditarod song, Trail Song, a true Hobo Jim classic which became the official song of the Iditarod. And whereas our community was very saddened with the news regarding his cancer diagnosis, and whereas Hobo Jim shaped our community for the better in many ways throughout the years, and whereas he was a shining example of the Alaskan spirit and had the heart of a true Alaskan. Now therefore, I, Paul Whitney, Mayor of City of Soldotna, on behalf of the city, extend heartfelt condolence to the Varso family and join his many friends and acquaintances in mourning the loss of Hobo Jim, a man who gave so much to Alaska. Dated 13th day of October, 2021. My report is I'd just like to welcome aboard Mr. Nelson, our new council member, and the reappearance of Mr. Chilson and Ms. Hutchings as newly reelected, and thank council member Eric Hugarty for his service and for all he's done for our community. Moving on to the next item under 10 is council reports and Soldotna Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Chilson.
Of course, right when you need your meeting notes, Microsoft Word decides to do an update, so. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors met on October 8th this last week. There wasn't too much on our agenda, but just a couple key points. They have finalized their visitor count numbers for this summer season, and there's actually a 127% increase from last year, which is a very welcome surprise given the current state of affairs. We're still down 27% from 2019, but the trend is that we're continuing to see an increase in visitors to the peninsula during that season. So they're very optimistic about the continuation of our tourist season, the recovery of the local business economy next year. Additionally, they have recently expanded the picnic table seating options behind the visitor center above the river to hopefully get more people in there and kind of enjoying the greenery that we have there above the river with the beautiful view, and just more options for a visitor center is always a welcome addition. Additionally to that, they are beginning the board of director election process that's still ongoing. And two more events that are coming up. We have the pie auction this weekend, Saturday the 16th. It's going to be held at the Sterling Community Center. That is the #1 fundraiser for the chamber each year, and the majority of that funding is actually used to support local scholarships for our students and our businesses. So it's very exciting to see that continuing. If you're interested in going, I know there's still a number of seats available. You can contact Shannon at the chamber or reach out to me and I can point you to the right person, and we can get you some tickets on that. And lastly, the Spark Soldotna Business Scholarship Program is coming back again this year, and that's going to be held November 12th. And if you recall correctly, this is a program they kicked off 2 years ago. And it's a business scholarship program styled after Shark Tank. It's really cool, actually. We can get a number of young business owners and new potential startups together, and they basically pitch their ideas before a panel of sharks. And we have some local business owners and other community members that have a lot of experience in this arena that do the judging and give them a lot of constructive feedback. And at the end of the night, someone walks away with a pretty big scholarship to help kick that idea off the ground and get that going here in our community. So I'm pretty excited to see that return, and I would encourage you to go out and attend if you can. And that concludes my report. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Jolson? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 11 on the agenda, City Manager's Report. Ms. Queen.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. A couple things to update you on. The first two are projects. So we're 98% complete of the runway project at the airport. That was the $7 million federal grant, 100% federally funded with no local match. And it included taking out essentially a hump in the middle of the runway, flattening it, all new asphalt, new navigational aids, lighting, as well as some upgrades to the adjacent taxiways. The Public Works Department is on schedule with that project. There's some minor cleanup, but it's open again. The runway, we closed it back in May. It's open now, and the project looks great. So if you haven't taken a drive down Funny River, I encourage you to go check it out. Second project is the Memorial Park expansion. The council appropriated some additional funds early in 2020 to do some master planning and expanding. And if you recall, at the time, we were very low on available plots, particularly in the veterans area, but also in the lawn area. The master plan was adopted by the council in June, and we tackled the veterans area first. That's been online for some time, but I'm happy to report now that what we were calling phase 2, the new section of lawn with plots available for upright headstones or flat markers, is now also available. And to give you some context, the Memorial Park's 10 years old. There's approximately 185 plots that had been reserved or in use in that time. This new section has 385 new plots, so there is quite a bit of capacity if folks are looking to reserve a place or if they need a place to inter a loved one. They can contact the clerks, and the map has been updated on the website. They can now see where those new spots are available. Of the project budget, we used part of it for the master plan and the design, as well as construction. We do have approximately $80,000 remaining that is going to be put decremental landscaping that goes in the spring. So the landscaping's done. They've got some work to update some of the seeding in the spring, but we'll be putting in trees, landscaping, improving that buffer on the north edge adjacent to the neighborhood. And that work will be done in the spring, but it won't prohibit folks from accessing that space now. Third is just a congratulations to our Parks and Rec Department. They hosted the statewide Alaska Recreation Parks Association conference last week. They had Parks and Rec folks from all over the state attending a conference at the Sports Center, and Andrew Carmichael, Joel Todd, their team coordinated all of the events, the learning opportunities. I got to attend the award banquet and see all of the good work going on around the state. It was a really uplifting, fun group of people, and I'm proud of our team for hosting that conference. They actually get to host it again. They were awarded that conference for 2 years. So next October, that group of Parks and Recs professionals from all over the state will be back talking about turf management and ice arena administration and all the things that go into that field. Last is congratulations to the chief and to the department. We didn't get to recognize them by name, but Chief Molnarek was here with us tonight, Lieutenant Cant, several of our sergeants and officers. The accreditation that they've gone through and that they update, I think, speaks to the professionalism of the department and the high standard that they hold themselves to. So thank you, Chief, for going through that process again and for setting that high standard. And that concludes my report, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the council? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 11, or 12 on the agenda, public comments. Members of the public will have 3 minutes to comment. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Garrett from Kenai. I just wanted to actually ask a couple questions, if I may, rather than comments. But I was the ordinance that had the asterisks by them. I didn't realize that that was on the consent agenda. That was that a motion that was passed on the ordinances, or no? Was that not passed? On items, ordinances 1, 2, and 3?
Every item on the consent
All
agenda passed, other than the one that was pulled off, which was number 47.
Number, which one?
I'm sorry?
Number 47. Okay. So ordinance 2021-22, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $100,000 in COVID-19 relief special revenue fund for grant funds provided by the state of Alaska. Department of Health and Social Services did pass, is that correct?
That was pulled off the agenda,
That was pulled off the agenda.
yes.
Okay, so has that been tabled?
I'm sorry?
Has that been tabled?
No, it's just been withdrawn. It'll probably be reintroduced at a later date.
Okay. Thank you for clarification.
Anyone else from the audience would like to make any comments? Seeing none, looking at the Zoom, I see no hands raised. So we'll move on to the next agenda item, which will be agenda item 13, council comments. And I don't see our student representative on the Zoom, so we'll move on to Mr. Carey.
I thought you were going to do that. I just want to say one thing for Mr. Chilson. A little over 10 years ago, I was involved in a race for the state house. And on election day, I was 2 votes ahead. And by the time the absentees came in, I lost. And so I just want to say, I very much understand what was probably some anxiety and concerns that you had. And you, like Representative Olson, who I ran against, you were reelected as he was. And I'm glad to see you here.
Ms. Hutchings.
Well, I'd just like to welcome Dan Nelson to the fold, and I'm so happy that Jordan got reelected. And congratulations, Chief. I think that's a wonderful tribute. And also, I was pleased with the fact that we have so many people in our chambers tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Chilson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things. I'd also like to welcome Dan to joining our council. It's going to be great to have you on board. And then also give a thank you to Councilman Eric Ugarte, who is still on council until the end of the week, and just appreciation of all his work for the community here in Soldotna. I know he genuinely cares about our community, and he will be missed. Additionally, I'd like to also congratulate the Soldotna Police Department on their accreditation. I know it's a very welcome thing, and I know there's a lot of hard work that goes into that happens behind the scenes, so we truly are appreciative of that. And lastly, I had the opportunity to attend 2 nights of our local parks conference that the Soldotna Parks Department was hosting here this last week. It was a really fantastic opportunity to meet different parks managers for different municipalities throughout the state and kind of hear what's happening elsewhere and what exciting developments that are happening up and about in Alaska, and get some ideas that we might potentially be able to run with here in Soldotna. I don't know if it was mentioned earlier, but the way this parks conference is structured is when you host it, you actually host it for 2 years. So they will be returning to our city for next year. And I'm kind of disappointed that I missed a number of the sessions that they were presenting on, because there are some pretty cool things that they were giving talks on. I'm very much going to be looking forward to hopefully getting in there next year and sitting in to listen on some of those presentations. So thank you again to the city staff for all the work that went into hosting that this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chilson. And I haven't forgotten you, Mr. Ruffridge. It's your turn now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to congratulate those elected to positions and welcome to Mr. Nelson as well. And also say a huge thank you to our police department as well for continued efforts and holding that standard high. And just appreciate all the work that you guys do. Yeah, thank you for the chance to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Ruffridge. Moving on to the next agenda item is executive session. Designated city seat on the Kenai Peninsula Borough Planning Commission, City Attorney Brooks Chandler, AS 4462.310C3, matters which may by law, municipal charter, or ordinance are required to be confidential. May I have a motion to enter into executive session? Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the Soldotna City Council enter into an executive session to discuss with City Attorney Brooks Chandler the designated seat on the Kenai Peninsula Borough for the city. The executive session would include the mayor, all council members here and online, the city manager, city attorney, the economic development and planning director, and the city clerk.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Chilson. For those attending through Zoom, the Zoom meeting will end and will not be resumed after the executive session. There is no further business to be taken up after the executive session. However, after the executive session is over, the meeting will briefly resume at soldotna.org/streaming. And then we will have a motion to come out of executive session. We are now going into executive session, and we'll need everyone to please vacate the chambers. 15 p.m. And then October the 27th, City Council meeting at 6 p.m. Just for one sideline here, I just thought of, there is a possibility on November 10th that the VA facility here in Soldotna will have their grand opening and official opening. So you might want to mark that down on your calendars if you want to attend. It's not official yet, but it's either going to be the 10th or the 17th of November. And that's all, and no other further business in front of us. Meeting's adjourned.
And I've got 30 seconds before I can shut the recording down.